Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Good morning from beautiful California. My name is Matthew Boggs, and I have the pleasure of being here today to represent Cradlepoint and speak to you about the power of Gigabit LTE, 5G, and the public sector. As we begin, I want to introduce myself. Again, my name is Matthew Boggs. I'm a sales engineer supporting public sector here at Cradlepoint. Now, don't let the picture confuse you. Time to update the headshot. I have had the pleasure of being with Cradlepoint since May of 2019. Prior to that, I was working actually as a solutions design engineer and on the mobility side within AT&T and AT&T FirstNet, supporting Northern California and several other locations as well. And the time with AT&T was about 7 years. Prior to that, I actually worked with Sierra Wireless by way of a company called Airlink Communications, which is where I started my cellular career in hardware. So I've been doing this for about 16 years now. I've had the benefit of supporting California throughout all of it. I've actually had this territory one way or another for the better part of the 16-year career, and public safety first responders have been a part of my pool of people I've got to work with through that entire time. Before I go forward, I want to actually thank, for those of you that are on, that are part of the public safety world, thank you for your service and sacrifice for our communities across the state and across the nation. For those of you that serve one way or another, what you do is something that I don't feel is ever truly appreciated or recognized enough. So please, on behalf of myself, and I know it echoes my team here at Cradlepoint, thank you for your service. We truly appreciate that, and know it's something that not many people can do. So today, we're going to talk about 5G. We're going to talk about it in a different way, but we're going to look at what was, what is, and then what's going to be. Now, Cradlepoint's a company at first, and it's difficult today to find a trade magazine or a cellular carrier whose physical or digital presence isn't somehow covered with 5G related marketing material, and Cradlepoint is right there. You go to our corporate website, we've got our 5G information out there, and that's because 5G is very important to us, because as an industry leader, we've achieved a lot of firsts, and Cradlepoint was determined to be the first to launch a device focused in our customer base in the 5G market, and this year, we did exactly that. In August of 2020, amongst everything else, Cradlepoint launched the first 5G devices on a public network, on Telstra's network in Australia. Telstra is one of the premier carriers operating in Australia, and our 5G devices are actively on their network today. As part of that push and that drive to be first, that notoriety has given Cradlepoint the opportunity to discuss 5G with a variety of people across various segments and locations around the world, and there's many questions that are asked. 5G has a huge question bank that can be tapped into, but the most frequently asked questions, the ones that we hear most often, they're about when. When will 5G be ready? When will the network be ready in our area? When will Cradlepoint have a 5G device? And at times, these questions come with feedback from agencies and operators that say, we might consider 5G in the future, sometimes years in the future, but it is a consideration. So based on that and all that feedback, the question I'll be focusing on, two of them actually, are the most important in my mind, which is when should we start planning for 5G and what can we do today? Now we're going to touch on what in a moment, but as for timing, the answer is now. Before we talk about how you should be preparing for 5G or touch on what 5G actually is, let's take a moment to focus on why your agency should be looking at your deployments today, your immediate and short-term needs, and ultimately helping lay out your pathway to 5G on your own. The concept of the wide area network is something that's consistently, through the 20th century was basically defined, fixed locations, large area, pretty standard. 21st century, that definition has changed and evolved far beyond what we would have ever expected in the 20th century. Many agencies, that wide area network has now become a territory they work within, the functional area they support, and a terrestrial plot that has moving borders that edge and flow based on situational and operational awareness and things that are going on. And with that expansion of the wide area network, there's additional challenges that have been introduced that require unique solutions. Diverse high availability is something that is important to everybody. If you don't have connectivity, you have services and solutions that just don't work. So we have to have that high availability. The ability to support resources and incidents that take place in random locations with little to no time to repair is definitely something essential that we've all ran into. Now, the expanding of the wide area network, that's enabled customers to cut the cord and start using high bandwidth applications that are needed, that can't be limited by the terrestrial locations that they are needed in. You don't have to worry about the back end connectivity being not thorough enough or not robust enough to support some of these applications that would have previously been unthinkable. And with that, even if the bandwidth isn't intensive, sometimes locations can just be challenging and require additional reach. It goes far beyond what traditional infrastructure can support. And these environments are often remote and almost never ideally located. There's an increased need for high availability and maximizing the efficiency that continues to drive home the need for intelligent routing and bandwidth management. And the ability to make sure that you're online during those mission critical times is something that is continuing to grow in importance. And ultimately, we know that 2020 has shown us resources can be pretty thin when it comes down to multiple occurrences happening, especially if those resources are subject matter experts that are in high demand. They must be able to communicate and work remotely to maximize efficiency and ensure that as it's needed, the support they render can be properly distributed, because most often lives are at stake. And finally, the unknown. The venue that arrives from nowhere presents unique challenges that require flexibility, ingenuity, and elasticity. The situation where I will often apply my favorite concept, semper gumby, always flexible. Now we're going to take a moment, we're going to look through a few of these solutions, because these are ones that come up quite often. And these are some of the places where we can see that 5G is going to expand and impact what is already being done. Historically, we've used LTE on video deployments. As inaccessible locations become more necessary, I have to put a pole top camera up, I have a location that I can't put wired services to, or I need to rapidly deploy something. And 4G LTE greatly expanded the footprint of where those can be deployed. Now today with Gigabit LTE, the quality of the live video is greatly improved, and now it's not just an instance of I see a person or I can see a face, but now I can see structure, I can see important details, I can see nuances that allow me to identify what I'm looking at to an even greater degree. Now, as we look at 5G, now we can see the potential to use the powerful machine and artificial intelligence that's being developed to automatically recognize situations, objects, or items that can trigger appropriate automated alerts and responses to allow for situational awareness, even if a set of human eyes isn't staring at the video, watching the solution. So that is something that is currently in development and being worked on, and it's amazing to see the evolutions that are being made with that greater bandwidth. Again, one of the lessons from our last couple of months dealing with COVID is that medical professionals need to work in the field. They still need to have access to those patient records and research material, and the ability to apply LTE to that has allowed them to work at a greater distance and be more efficient when farther away from their primary location. We've seen improvements in the medical equipment along with the improvements brought by Gigabit class LTE that have helped increase the distance from their solutions and from their locations, as well as expanding the types of services that can be offered in the field. This allows time-sensitive diagnostics to be done remotely. It allows the saving of time and ultimately the saving of precious lives in the process. Now 5G is already being predicted to support new revolutions in remote patient care and telemedicine. This can include potentially the ability to use robotic assistants, high-definition cameras, and augmented reality that will one day hopefully help perform remote surgeries and operations that will allow for someone's life to be saved when they can't be transported to a medical facility because it's just not an option. I was part of a search and rescue team for my local sheriff for several years, and I can tell you as a former search and rescue team member, the locations where incidents occur are rarely ever optimal for communication. Being in an area with a heavy tree canopy or traversing a crevice where you lose communication with command, it immediately increased the risks dramatically as you are isolated on that island. You're unable to radio for status or support or help. There's no additional resources and you're on your own. Now the expansion of the cellular network, that's allowed the carriers the ability to deploy the additional deployable resources that help enable the use of cellular devices in scenarios where they normally wouldn't be used. Gigabit class LTE has helped improve the existing communications and expands the resources that are available to serve as the eyes and ears of an operation. Eyes and ears that can peer in the darkness, that can look atop the summit or the ridgeline where it's unsafe to send people. This all serves to save resources to mitigate additional risks to the first responders and expand the search area with greater efficacy and improved efficiency when moments count and it's mission critical that person is found. With the introduction of 5G's performance and the reduced latency, we predict that these are going to allow for the same services to be enhanced and augmented to add new capabilities, allow the implementation of mobile edge computer-based functionality. All these signs point to 5G serving to enhance the performance of those involved to achieve the ultimate goal of every mission, and that's to see everyone get home safely. So what's 5G? I promise this is not going to be a deep dive into the 5G realm. If you'd like that, my contact information is at the end. Myself, Cradlepoint, we have amazing resources. And again, we've had the benefit of being the first in our industry to launch 5G devices in the world. So we've had a lot of hands-on experience. We'd love to share it with you. But in general, the 5G deployment represents unique and diverse change in cellular technology because it's been a design that simultaneously employs revolution, evolution, and innovations. 5G's incorporation of new technologies that haven't been deployed previously, implementation of upgrades to the radio access network hardware. This is all allowed for the densification of cellular resources, which is going to support millimeter wave frequencies in 5G. More cells, more places closer together, working in a homeostatic state that will allow for that millimeter wave that was previously unobtainable. But in addition to those innovations, the repurposing of available spectrum and improvements in the underlying technologies, this has all fostered the increased efficiency in encoding and data transmissions. So the new spectrum has also been introduced, along with an expansion of the overall spectrum maps available to the carriers to use. Now, the current iteration of 5G being deployed is what's considered non-standalone 5G, and it includes an integration with 4G LTE Gigabit as a fallback, as well as providing the uplink path. Now, as 5G continues to evolve, standalone 5G will be deployed in the market, which will contribute to an increase in upload speeds that we will see discussed on the next slide. As I mentioned, I'm an engineer with over 16 years in the cellular communications industry, and I've had the privilege of watching the evolution from CDPD, a technology that a lot of people don't even remember. I've seen the battle between CDMA and GSM, seen the transition from 2G to 3G to 4G LTE, and now to 5G. And through all those evolutions, the key questions, and these are the things that continue to echo through all of the questions and answers, all of the things that we've discussed. There's two. How fast is it, and what's the latency going to be? Because those are the two key things for the people that are looking to employ this. Well, starting on the left, we can see the original launch of LTE, and it was an impressive improvement over 3G, both at a speed and a latency perspective. But the upload and download speeds have increased substantially with Gigabit class LTE, as well as the latency being improved. And Gigabit class LTE is what's really in the market today. That's what we're seeing and using, and that is what is being deployed with our current devices. Now, looking forward at the 5G specifications, we can see a substantial improvement in the projected download speeds for both of the 5G RF profiles here, what we call the 5G sub 6 gigahertz or the 5G millimeter wave, which is the millimeter wave I previously mentioned on the other slide. Now, it's worth noting that the upload speed on the non-standalone 5G here reflects similar speeds to the Gigabit class LTE data. This is because that Gigabit class LTE data is the upload path during that evolution of the 5G network. So you can see that the download speeds are projected to increase and improve. The uplink speeds are going to mirror what we have today, which is important when we start planning our pathway forward. The introduction of standalone 5G, it's going to serve to improve both the upload speed and reduce the overall latency substantially. Now, overall, there are significant gains when utilizing 5G from starting and looking at the road ahead as things move forward. But before we move forward, I do want to take a moment to focus on one aspect of the data that often gets overlooked because everybody becomes so focused on that 5G data downlink and all the numbers in the marketing. The comparison between 4G LTE and Gigabit speeds are substantial. Gigabit speed, or Gigabit class LTE, I should say, is at least 5 times greater. This represents today's current network, and this is the environment that is going to continue to improve as those 5G resources are put out there, because as 5G improves, the 4G LTE Gigabit backhaul that supports it is going to improve. So we want to keep our eye on today as we plan for tomorrow. Now let's move forward so we can discuss that a little bit further. One of the concepts Cradlepoint has consistently promoted is the pathway to 5G. Now, if one considers the way the various elements of 5G are going to be phased into the market, that phased methodology, it sets forth a path for the non-standalone 5G that's being launched today and leads to the standalone 5G plan for the future. But the beginning of that path really starts with Gigabit class LTE, which is one of the key factors why the answer to the question, when should I start looking at 5G, is now. To that end, this is a diagram that visually shows the pathway to 5G as we represent it in a very open general stance. The path is divided between gigabit class LTE and 5G, with each step representing a broad use of wireless wide area networking today. Since gigabit class LTE is rolling out faster than 5G, has increased performance over 4G LTE that existed previously, and has an excellent propagation characteristic, gigabit class LTE is really where we should be starting as our first step on the pathway to 5G, when your agency is looking to prepare for the adaptation of 5G going forward. As 5G rolls out, you can move from gigabit class LTE to 5G, but the importance of planning is that you will move as it is fitting your deployments and your requirements. And one important thing when planning gigabit class LTE is to look at, are you planning for your fleet or mobile assets? Because the fleet and mobile assets, as much of the industry today is focused on the fixed or stationary locations, fleet and mobile assets will continue to see the benefit from the gigabit class LTE further down the line as the deployments occur. Regardless of which application you're really focusing on, the great thing about this pathway to 5G is that your agency is ultimately involved and ready to go today if you're on that gigabit class LTE path. And you move forward at your own pace when it's relevant to your infrastructure, your budget, and your capabilities. But what's the next steps? Well, Cradlepoint believes that the public sector requirements are far different from the consumer, or what might be called the prosumer market, and that an agency should ensure that at minimum, the deployment solution that they look at, that it meets what we call the 5 imperatives for business, our 5G imperatives for business. So let me give you an example of each of these imperatives. Now consider an agency that has hundreds of existing assets. These assets are going to need to be refreshed and eventually plan to utilize 5G, so they're going to change out over time. Selecting a solution that can be deployed today with an assurance it can be augmented in the future as the network evolves is going to be ideal. This would be especially true if an agency has multiple divisions that have different requirements of their hardware based on the intended application. So this is why you need a device and an option that supports a full range of cellular technologies. Your solution provider should be able to do that. As part of that, there is the need to support the entire 5G spectrum, which includes the 4G spectrum of today and the forthcoming 5G spectrum of tomorrow. Now, changing in price and availability have made many agencies look at solutions that support utilizing multiple cellular carriers in those gateways and have the ability to make smart choices between them when needed. To support this, any solution that you choose really has to be able to make those choices on demand as needed without interaction. They need to include hardware that supports multiple carriers with software-driven modems and the intelligence designed to make those changes at mission-critical times when human interaction isn't an option. And as we discussed, unlike prior generations, 5G is a collaboration of new technologies, spectrum, and deployment models. And the partners selected to support a path forward, they really should have the ability to support that deployment, to monitor and maintain that in-field solution by providing tools like smartphone installation tools or monitoring tools, the ability to use captive modems so that the devices are actually associated properly within the management system they're using, 5G tools and analytics, out-of-band management, and things that are optimized for operation and management efficiency. So you really need to find a partner that offers a complete life cycle management tool or set of tools. And the carriers each have their own standards that they follow. Though all carriers, they conform to the 3GPP standards. They implement standards differently to gain the optimal and efficient use of their network that they have. Additionally, the software for these modem manufacturers that is designed has to support several carriers, multiple carriers at the same time potentially, based on a customer choosing to use a high availability option to use multiple carriers in the same device. And within that broad market, they might have two or three options they're choosing between. Agencies depend on those solutions to get the most out of the operator's network, and the partner selected should provide customized software that defines the modem versions for each of the operators as required and is optimized for those operators, not just something that generic comes off the shelf. These endpoints have to be pre-programmed, remotely manageable, and have multiple levels of integrity to make sure that challenges don't occur in the field during mission-critical operations when missions can't be compromised based on technical challenges. You need someone that knows the product, you need someone that knows how it works, you need someone that knows what the carriers are doing and how to work with it efficiently. And ultimately, High availability and minimal downtime are essential concepts when considering the importance of the data transfer, because your agencies operate and depend on this technology 24/7, 365. The partner solution must offer effortless wireless endpoint management in a wired first, excuse me, in a wired first software defined WAN environment. All in one capabilities such as routing, embedded wireless, foundational wireless, all of the above in a deployment. The solution deployed should provide options to implement various levels of routing and data flow control based on the agency's specific needs, wants, and environments. These, in our opinion, are five of the 5G imperatives that are something that all agencies should look at when they're choosing a partner to move forward with their 5G deployments. So what do we do? Let's start planning today. Our first suggestion is to start meeting with your resources. Identify the teams within your agency that are potentially impacted by the changes to your infrastructure or might need to be involved going forward. Meet with them. 5G is going to create a new opportunity and enable solutions that will potentially be overlooked in the past or have been deemed inaccessible or unusable. Ideally, having feedback from all those parties today will help streamline the process and minimize last-minute changes. This is also a great time to look beyond buzzwords in marketing, look beyond and review your current deployments, potential new projects, and really consider the benefits of embracing the Gigabit class LTE today as you potentially plan and move towards your first steps of your pathway to 5G for tomorrow. Now, this is the point at which Cradlepoint can provide guidance based on our knowledge and experience with Gigabit class LTE and 5G. We have dedicated resources ready to help review existing deployments, to discuss challenges or shortcomings, as well as work with you to integrate new solutions and help evolve your infrastructure to meet your needs. We can also work with you to run proof of concept trials, help you build your technology roadmap, and look forward as long as you would like. Quite honestly, we have the ability, because of all of these connections that we've made and all these amazing partners we have, to help evolve your solution to where you want it to be and maybe beyond. But ultimately, we're here to serve you. We're here to support the agencies, because when it comes down to it, when the world is at its worst, we as citizens, we have to and do depend on our first responders to be at their best. It's our job to ensure that your agencies have the best equipment possible. So ultimately, Cradlepoint, myself, and all of our hundreds of employees across the way and thousands of people, their partners and people beyond, we're standing here ready to offer our services as a partner. We can help provide guidance and unique technical perspective. We can help provide a pathway to 5G. We have the experience, we have the solutions, we have the passion, and we are here to support you and your first responders as you support us in the community.
Thank you very much. So I know we've gone a little bit over. We're going to get Cellwatch in here. If you guys have any questions, I know Matt can meet you over in the meeting room. I posted that link in the chat. So if there's anything else, feel free, Matt, to head on over there and meet up with other people as needed. So thank you very much.